You know, I really couldn't be bothered to actually figure out a proper intro to this entire thing. I've spent a lot of time, writing and deleting a script for the beginning of this whole thing. Because I've been taking it pretty damn seriously, but honestly, I'm not a very serious person. I should not be taking a pretty unserious project so seriously as an unserious person. So I'm just gonna go ahead and start the video without an intro, so you understand that this is not a serious project with no serious meaning behind it. It is just merely a video on the internet that you are now watching. I will introduce myself though. Hi, I usually go by Lucifer, or Sam, and I'm here making Journal 1 from a little show called Gravity Falls. Don't really know if you've seen it or not. I mean, I'm gonna assume you have because you clicked on this video, so I don't understand why you would be watching it otherwise, unless you just really like art. If you're one of those people, I like you. Thank you for being here. Just for liking art. You know, people like you are cool. But anyway, if you don't know what this is, well, Gravity Falls is a Disney show that aired for, I don't know, man, I think from like 2011, 2012 to 2013, 2015 or something like that. I can't be bothered to Google it. And, you know, it was kinda popular. Just a little bit popular. It had a triangle in it that everyone really liked, named Bill. You know, it was a little popular. Could call it maybe even niche, but it was, pretty popular. I watched it around the time it ended, because I was probably way too young to comprehend it when it was still airing, but, I ended up getting extremely obsessed with it, as one does, because, it's absolute peak, and there's, you can't really find shows or animated TV like that anymore. That's just banger after banger, except for like maybe 1 or 2 episodes, which is insane for 2 seasons, genuinely. But anyway, there's, this series had 2 physical book releases, right? One of them was, Journal 3. Journal 3 contained all of the, actual, projects, all the writing, the research, everything inside of that, from the show, just into a physical release, and even got a blacklight version of said release, including all the extra secrets, and was a huge coding project, too. I think it's still unfinished fully. It's a very cool book. It goes for, $20 at, the Barnes & Nobles or whatever. And just recently, in August of current year and current, month, there was a new book that came out, the Book of Bill, and it was extremely, it's still being actively uncoded. It's a very awesome book with a lot of more cool things, and even just very much improved upon the original, really. They definitely unleashed Alex Hirsch a bit more with this one. But here's something that I know a lot of people have wanted, but will probably never get. Journal 1 and Journal 2. The reason why they're probably never gonna get any actual release is just because they're kind of irrelevant to the story. I mean, they don't include any sort of worthwhile content in there that's worth producing a large book over, let alone a blacklight one even. So it's just kind of been a thing that people have asked, but never really, it's never gonna happen to me. It's been over a decade now. I mean, it's very much not gonna happen. Regardless, I still thought it would be fun to pick up a project like this and attempt to make my own, just by going off of an inference of, everything we know already existing inside of said book. Well, books, because there's gonna be 2 of these. And, yeah. This video is covering the cover of said book, and how I made it, but before I can even get into that, well, I should probably explain to you that this entire series was heavily inspired by, a YouTuber called Birdo4ever, like the number 4, who is making Journal 3 as we speak into a large series and is extremely talented with a lot of really cool stuff that he's doing, including the Blacklight edition. And, if you're gonna watch me, go watch him too. His videos are not, too long, and it's definitely worth your time, even if they are, like, some of them can be long, which is not a problem. I mean, come on. How could you not want more content from him? But yeah, a lot of the things that I am using in my video directly inspired by his videos. So seriously, go check it out, man. Like, what are you missing? You're missing nothing. But watch mine first. Watch mine first before you go watch his. Anyway, I'm also going to quickly explain how this whole thing is going to work for the sake of this project, which is mostly just of, I'm going to be working on creating a mock-up, right? Mock-up of the, projects, and a, you know, draft, and then when I get the draft, I'm going to start working on making the page a reality, and that's kind of just how this is going to be, per page. And I'm also going to be using real pages that we know exist in the book, and put them into the book. So yeah, you're gonna watch my whole process of that if you want to. You don't have to if you don't want to, but you know, you can. I would prefer if you did. But anyway. So, yeah. Here's the video. Thanks for watching this unscripted section. Because I can't script for shit. Not yet at least. Hopefully the next episode will have better scripting with a better opening and other things. Yeah. Alright, truthfully, this is my first time filming a YouTube video, and writing one, or doing anything YouTube related at all, actually. So this whole process is going to be experimental and a huge learning experience for me. If there's any quality issues, please forgive me, man. I'm trying my best. With that out of the way, I'm going to start this whole project. You know, I'm going to explain what I'm doing exactly. First off, I purchased an 8x6 handmade journal by, I think they're called Nomads Co. off Amazon. I'm going to put the link in the bio if you want it. It was an overall pretty perfect size and aesthetic for this project, so if you see, for some reason, you know, want to do this project too, you can. I highly recommend it. I highly recommend this specific journal. To get this thing looking like the actual journal, I got a 13 gauge brass sheets to get the metal bits. The hand within the show is clearly some kind of metallic gold or, you know, paper or foil or whatever. But for the sake of longevity, I opted to go with brass. Also because it looks cooler. The 13 gauge isn't too thick, so I used craft scissors and a sandpaper sponge to do this part. Although I highly recommend using an actual metal filer. I was just too lazy to get out and get one for this. Here I drew out a template of the 6 fingers that would actually fit the brass, and with a permanent marker I traced it out onto the brass. With this whole part you could do 2 things really. First off, you could do what I'm doing and make a template and then trace Sharpie on it. Or you can commit an act of blasphemy against me and glue the template to the brass and waste your time scraping the fucking paper off. Why would you do that? Don't do that. Do what I'm doing in the only correct way, obviously. After you stick permanent marker on your metal, get a pair of scissors and then attempt to cut it out. Make 4 pointless incisions because for some reason I chose to do that. I'm gonna go ahead and speed up cutting out this thing because I don't think you want to watch me fight a piece of metal for an uncomfortable amount of time. Also, I'm editing this solo and I don't want to watch that. Alright, now that you have your 6-fingered piece of metal, I went ahead and gathered some pieces of the scrap metal and used the torn corner of a Dollar Tree Sonic Sock cardboard thing to use as a template for a wrap around the corners. So you can do that for the corner protectors. For some stupid reason, I decided to make 2 of these things, thinking I'd sandwich the metal between the 2 or use it as a point of reference to draw on the pattern, which defeats the whole point of the pattern. Luckily, I got smarter later. It takes me a ridiculous amount of time to figure it out, but trust me, I got smarter, I swear. Now after your sleeping dirt-eating brain cell wakes up and does its job, trace the thing out and make sure the chunks are sized properly to bend into shape later. Then, because I can't be bothered to bend metal due to my frail fingers, I got 2 metal bending pliers to do my job for me. I put it on top of the journal and double-checked if it was going to wrap around correctly, and it did. Then I got into a fight with it because it wasn't growing up how I wanted it to. Luckily, it was easy to bend it back into place and not be a disappointment. Now we're gonna go ahead and do this again, just without me figuring out how the template works and you know, since I've grown as a person. I made sure to check if it's all the same size, lazily, and tested to see how it'd look on the actual journal. Now do it for a third time because you have to. Once I had cut out that guy, I resized them a bit off camera and stuck a dot on the middle of each piece. This is so later on I know where to glue the rivets. Unfortunately, this didn't work in my favor, and you'll see why later. I got another piece of the torn Sonic Socks cardboard from the Dollar Tree and used my Sharpie to go ahead and create a template from the little spinal bands on the side of the journal. This ended up being a waste of time because due to my impatience and semi-incompetence, I didn't bother to check if I had enough metal to actually cut out these things. Which I didn't. So I ended up gathering 2 imposters and attempted to try and force them to be what I needed them to be the best I could and hope, you know, nobody would notice on the finished project. Then again, now you know, so that effort's in vain. Now here I just went ahead and grabbed the sanding sponge because I couldn't be bothered to use a real tool for this and haphazardly attempted to sand everything to be less violently pokey. I'm also going to speed this part up since neither of us will gain anything from watching me sand metal with a sponge. Now for the rivets, I got these fellas as regular old pins from Michael's. I got 3 of them from the obscenely large quantity that I'll probably do nothing with and went ahead and attempted to cut off the needle bits from them. I think that the brain cell went back to sleep though because I struggled a bit to figure out how to actually use the wired cutters and putting it in a bag so the needles don't fly at my face and make me more blind. Now I went ahead and sanded those last bits down to make it easier to glue and yeah, boom, metal parts are done. Cool. Now on to the actual journal and modifying this puppy. I wanted to go ahead and rub off some of the sealant on the leather to make it easier to paint using rubbing alcohol. Except I didn't have rubbing alcohol. I also didn't read the label of the product I wiped onto this journal. Well, it turns out it's non-alcoholic nail polish remover. So basically this piece of footage was me wasting my time thinking I was doing something. Now that I've teleported a piece of mystery paper below the journal because I didn't wipe down my station well enough to prevent the metal scrapings to get metal dust all over the wet journal. Be responsible with metal stuff, please, I beg you. I'm getting my paint mixture ready to get this guy up and rolling. I figured since this journal wasn't buried like the other 2, it'd be a lot more bright and vibrant with its coloration and less muddy in comparison to the other 2, which will be made eventually. So I mixed up some brown, red, and blue acrylics to get a more maroon type of color. This is because I had no purple. From there I started painting it on as evenly as I could bother and tried my best to use up all the paint to justify the fact I wasted way more paint than I had to for this journal. I made sure to get all the nooks and crannies on the spine and ended up doing about 2 layers of paint. Now with the paint done, let's go ahead and destroy this thing. Off-screen, using an X-Acto blade, I made an incision in the shape of the journal one's little tears and got my scissors out to fully cut this thing out. Now I just barely got some footage of me scraping off the leather to make it more screwed looking, but here's a lesson for you all. If you want to make a YouTube series that requires you recording with your damn phone, make sure not to be an excessive data hoarder. Why? Well, my phone decided to give me a massive fuck you in the middle of this and had full storage. So I ended up not recording the scraping parts. All you need to know though is that I used a few sharp tools and scratched off the patterns to my liking. And with the back I used my X-Acto knife to slice out some pieces of leather to mimic it missing leather in the back. From there I cut small parts of the scrap leather and glued it down to make it seem like it was sort of lifting and peeling. It adds a bit of dimension to the whole thing, which is pretty cool. Now back to the actual footage. I couldn't imagine this thing being all too clean, even with it kept under Stanley's care, especially considering Ford gave it to Stanley while it was already looking like it was somewhat falling apart. So watering down a black and brown paint mixture, I started to wipe down the thing with said paint mixture to my liking, and dabbled it off with a paper towel. To make sure it really got the effect I wanted, I used a sponge to dabble on the paint directly, then sort of smeared it around with the paper towel. I then got a wet paintbrush to dilute it a bit and finally, wipe that down. For the back I did something kinda similar, although I used that same sponge tool to dabble on that large stain in the back. Same goes for the spine, I just wiped it off a bit more in the middle to make it look like it had a certain neat little effect on the corners. Now to actually assemble this guy, I got myself some epoxy, Gorilla Glue brand. If you ever wanted to use this stuff, keep a window open or do it somewhere well ventilated. It stinks like hell and it gave me a bit of a headache even with my windows wide open. The stuff cures pretty fast, about 5 minutes, so I did waste a bit of product keeping all the parts separate from each other and making about 3 batches to get everything glued in. But I did consider it worth it since I wanted to make sure everything was applied well. I got those rivets onto the corner protectors first and foremost, then I went ahead and got the rest of the pieces there. Cool. Now here I just went ahead and painted that number 1 on the piece with 2 layers of black acrylic. I didn't bother to wait for it to dry, and immediately went ahead and got that same sponge tool to dabble in that black and brown watered down paint mix onto the metal. Here I'm painting the metal to make it look like a lot less shiny. More worn and rusty, just overall old. I could have oxidized it easily, but I didn't have the time for it, and I really prefer painting this stuff anyway. So a lot of this is just me dabbling paint on and wiping it off. I attempted to make sure the edges were a lot more nasty looking, since I can imagine that this is where most of the buildup would be. I also used my thumb to smear some stuff more authentically, since I can only imagine how many fingerprints and smears would be on this relic. I also ended up scratching bits of the one off to make it, seem a lot less nice. Then to give it some more color, I used a dark green acrylic to add some more nasty to it. I also purposely made sure to smear a lot of that green around the hand, just to give the dirt on the actual journal some color also. Now there's this strange little pattern on the bottom of the journal, not really sure what it is, but I went ahead and scraped it out with my X-Acto knife, and used some red acrylic to make it stick out just a tad. Now finally, there's this piece of paper I was informed of right before finishing up footage that is apparently somewhere taped into Journal 1. I'm an avid Gravity Falls fan, and I've genuinely never seen nor heard of it. Also looks really out of place, but the whole thing's coded weirdly and all, so I opted to go ahead and add it in loosely for now until I figured out some more information on it. If anyone can figure out what the hell it is, that'd be great. I printed it out pretty normal with some printer paper, but I'm gonna go ahead and assume this thing's kind of old. So I brewed some coffee in a tub, went ahead and folded it to fit it inside, stuck it in for a few seconds. Then I put it off to the side to wait for it to dry. Sorry for the weird camera, by the way. It was like 1 AM during this and I couldn't work with my phone at the moment. I went ahead and patted it dry with my towel, then I folded it and stuck it in. Like I said before, this was my very first time editing, voicing, and just overall doing anything like this for a video, so I apologize again if the quality is kinda cheeks. Either way, I'm pretty happy with the final product, and I'm excited to take this whole thing further. Thank you if you made it this far in the video. Genuinely, this thing took a hot second to make, and I really appreciate you watching this silly little thing I made. Hopefully you'll stick around for the rest of it.